Hey everyone, it's Brandy. Welcome back to my channel, Brandy Janae's Bookshelf. Today I am going to be sharing with you guys my March wrap up, and as always I have some stats for you guys before I get into the books. I read 21 books, and this is kind of a loose term on books because it also includes novellas and like comics and manga and all of those things. I read a lot of shorter things, but I read a lot of them because they were shorter. So like I said, all of that is included in that total of 21 books read. And in March I read 5,847 pages with an average rating of 3.55 stars. Luckily this month I had no books that were under 3 stars, even though this first book I'm talking about, the more I think about it, the more I kind of want to lower the rating, which sucks. The first one that I have is Unbuttoning the CEO by Mia Sosa, and I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. Like I said, the more I think about it, I'm thinking about lowering my rating. This one starts off following a character named Ethan Hill. He is the CEO of this big tech company, and he is, I believe, in court because he got a speeding ticket, and he has gotten so many. So the judge I think the judge gives him the option to either go to jail at this point, or he gets to have like 200 hours of community service. He ends up deciding to do the community service, and that's where he ends up meeting the other main character, Gracie Ramirez. Her name is actually like Graciela, but for the majority of the book she goes by Gracie. After some things, they end up agreeing to a no strings attached fling between the two of them, but as you can expect, it ends up becoming more than that. This one was a little weird, and I'm going to get into some of the reasons why I am thinking about lowering the rating. Mainly because the story I felt like was underdeveloped. It gave you like big plot points, but it didn't really give you all of the information in between, you know, all of the build up that I love in romance. And I think this was one of the first times where I was just like, what? I felt like I was missing information. Like I said, at the beginning, the main character Ethan, he ends up, like I said, he's in court because he's gotten another speeding ticket, and he has gotten so many, and he gets his option. So of course he chooses community service. It has to be for a company that is going to be benefited by his skills. So he ends up going to volunteer at this non-profit organization where these people teach people in need how to use technology. So a lot of this book we are focused on this elderly group, but we also have like this teenage boy who's kind of mentioned briefly. But anyway, before he even goes to this company, his friend / co-worker comes in and mentions something about this specific place where he's going to go volunteer. I can't remember if he had mentioned that he was going there or not, but the guy mentions the character Gracie. He's just like, oh, something about her, and it made it seem like they had already known each other, and this was like a chance for them to meet again and maybe rekindle a romance that was in the past. And it was weird because like the way they were talking, he was just like, yeah, it was like he was looking her up because, like I said, he had known her before but hadn't heard from her, and you know, something probably went wrong in the past. Turns out they didn't actually know each other at all. So it was really weird when they first met, and then they were already like ready to have sex with each other, and they had just met. And don't get me wrong, I've read stories like that where they have that attraction, but there is not like the story doesn't start off like they already know each other before they actually meet. It was really weird. There were a lot of different time jumps, and like I said, there was a lot of just different plot points that were put together. Because of this book, I'm nervous to check out anything more about her. I still will give her another chance because I believe this was her debut novel, so I'm not going to hold that against her. Moving on to my next book, which is also a 3 out of 5 stars, is Last Call at the Nightshade Lounge by Paul Kruger. I picked this book up as part of the Dragons and Tea book club, which is hosted by Melanie from Mel to the Annie and Amy from A Court of Crowns and Quills. This story is following Bailey Chen. She is a recent college grad. She's actually moved back to Chicago to live with her parents because she didn't have any job perspectives after college. So her parents are kind of forcing her to get a job. Like they're like, you need to go out and you need to get a job because you can't just like be here. I think they even threaten to kick her out if she doesn't get a job. So she's applying, but she's not really having that much luck, and she ends up running into an old friend from high school, and it's like this weird thing because they were best friends for forever, and then they ended up hooking up, I think, the summer before she went off to college, and it didn't go anywhere from there. So they had this really strained relationship, but they end up reconnecting, and through that she ends up getting a job working at the bar that he doesn't own, but his uncle owns, and he pretty much runs. So she ends up getting a job at this bar, and through this job she finds out that her co-workers are actually out fighting demons, and they're using their bartending skills to help out with that. The premise sounded really interesting. However, I feel like this book was another one that wasn't executed as well as it could have been. I felt like I said, the premise was really cool, and I feel really bad saying this, but I feel like if somebody else wrote it, it could have been a lot better than it was. Now, don't get me wrong, I did enjoy the story overall. I didn't necessarily find the main character, Bailey, a likable character, and the way certain things were handled, I was just like, I don't know. It wasn't my favorite thing ever. Like I said, we're following Bailey, and she's a recent college grad, but I feel like she's still in that almost like high school mentality, and it sucks to say that because she is so judgmental of people, like even coming back, even being in the situation that she's in. We see her in different situations, and like she's like, I felt like she was judging people so much at times, and she wanted everything to go her way, and I was just like, well, things are way different than what they were when you left high school, you know, and you need to grow up and you need to learn how to move on. Like, she all of a sudden realized she had feelings for this friend who she had the opportunity to be with, and now she's just like, I realized my mistake, but I want to be with him, but he had a girlfriend, and like she was doing stupid stuff, and I was just like, girl, no. But it was weird because that, like, I can't get into it because of spoilers, but yeah, all of that situation was just like, I wasn't a fan of that, because it's almost like she kind of just disregarded his girlfriend. She wanted to find her dislikable just so she can have a reason to try to like hit on him, basically, and I'm not cool with that. Also, sorry if there's some beeping starting. I think they're actually about to come get the trash, so I'm not gonna stop filming, but that's probably gonna start. Also, I did not appreciate how this book ended. It wasn't a bad ending, but I just felt so unsatisfied with it. I enjoyed it for the plot of the story. Like I said, I felt like it could have been done better, but the main part of the story was solid enough for me to enjoy it. But all of the other things surrounding it, especially our main character, I just wasn't a fan of. Next is another romance novel, and this one is Throb by Vi Keeland, or V Keeland. This story is following Kate, and she is actually participating in a reality dating show, and she has this contract where she's not allowed to date or have sex outside of the show, and she's also not allowed to talk about the terms of the contract that she signed with anyone. She thinks that this isn't going to be a problem because, you know, she hasn't had anyone that she's been interested in or dated for, I think, years now. But of course, as can be expected, when she signs up for this, she ends up unexpectedly meeting this guy named Cooper, and they're attracted to each other, and he asks her out, you know, when they meet, but she's like, no, I can't. She has to turn him down because of her previous arrangements, and she doesn't want to get sued or anything like that. Turns out that Cooper is actually the brother of the guy who's running the reality dating show thing that she's a part of, and he ends up finding out because his brother's actually asking him for money, so he continues to go visit the set to go see her and basically try to get her to agree to go out with him. This is another one that I have considered like lowering my rating for, because there were some things in this book that were really questionable, that they were a challenge, but not really. Like, they were kind of a challenge, but the character kind of was just like, oh, okay, well, you did it, so never mind. I think one of my first main issue was that she never told him that she did not want to date him. She specifically told him that she couldn't at the moment. And he eventually found out why. And even the fact that like she was on the show, he obviously has to realize that she probably signed some type of contract. He still kept going against what she said about that she couldn't at the moment to like pursue her. So my thing is, if someone says no, even though she doesn't want to, no means no. And it was like he kind of pushed and pushed and pushed until he got his way. So that was problem number one. Problem number two is that before she actually agreed to anything between them, he did a background check on her, and then he sent this shady guy out to go check out what was going on in her family life, to possibly try to figure out why she was like so adamant on staying on the show and, you know, sticking to her contract and trying to win and be the one who got picked. One of my things, like, I find it really weird. I feel like I'm stumbling over my words, sorry, but I enjoy having stories about billionaires. I don't know, sometimes I think if it's well done and the person who has the money isn't taking advantage of the other person, I don't mind it. However, this is one of those books that the guy with the money takes advantage of a situation, and he does what he can to try to get his way with his money. And I don't appreciate him having, like, him going behind her back to try to figure out what's going on with her home life. Because I'm like, she knows you have money, but she didn't ask you for help. And I think he even offered to help her, and she said, no, you know, this is my responsibility. I want to do this on my own. I don't want to take money from you. So at that point, he should have just like let it go. But he didn't. Or maybe he had did it before she said that. And I was just like, once again, I didn't appreciate that he took advantage of the fact that he had the money and he wanted to figure out what he wanted to know. And yeah, that is just a shady thing to me. And he ended up telling her that he did it, but that was the thing where I was saying where she didn't really like, she questioned it and she kind of challenged it, but it kind of just got forgotten, and I didn't really enjoy that. This was another one where I was kind of like on the fence about. So the next one that I read was Egomaniac by Vichelin. I think I actually read this one first, which is why I was just like, okay, I have another Vichelin, let me just go ahead and check this one out as well. I got both of those on the Kindle, not Kindle Unlimited, but the Audible Romance package. I gave Egomaniac a 3.5 stars. This one is following this guy named Drew Jagger. He comes back from a vacation. I can't remember exactly why he went on vacation, but he was having his office renovated, and he decided to go check in to see what progress they had made. His apartment was actually like in the building but above where his office is, so he was just like, before I go head up to my house, I'm gonna go and check on my office. And when he gets there, there's this woman in the office claiming that it's hers, and she's starting to call the police on him, but he's just like, no, you're crazy, this is my office. And like, after he gets her to calm down and they actually start talking, he gets her to realize that she's actually been scammed, and she gave all her money to this random person, and that the building, or the office at least, is actually his. I think a few days later he ends up calling her in because office furniture got delivered that wasn't supposed to be delivered, so she was coming to wait for them to come pick it up. And he ends up offering to let her stay and share the space because somebody who worked for him was out on leave and he didn't have a use for the space. So he told her, you know, you can use the office until she gets back, until you can, you know, or until you can find your own place. So they end up sharing a space, and he finds out that she's actually a marriage counselor and he is a divorce lawyer. So they kind of bump heads a little bit about that. As the more time they spend together, the more they started to realize maybe they're attracted to each other, and they start hanging out. It wasn't an immediate like they got together or anything. It took a few times for them to like go and hang out and talk and realize that maybe it could possibly be something more, but they were both holding back because he was like pretty jaded about a previous relation or his previous marriage, and he just like, I don't know if I really want any of this. I think he was kind of just like, I don't really believe in happiness with anyone, or, you know, it was certain things that happened. This one was a decent story, I think, if you're looking for something that's kind of a quick read. and you have Audible romance, it's one to check out, but it wasn't like my favorite thing in the world. So yeah. The next book that I have to talk about is Revelations by Melissa de la Cruz. This is another one that I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars to. This is the third book in the Blue Blood series, so I'm not really going to get into too many details about this book because there will be spoilers for the previous 2 books. But after certain situations from the second book, Skylar ends up in the situation where she's having to live with Charles Force. If you have read the previous 2 books or heard me talking about them, it's like her uncle, but they're not really related because of the way the vampire system works. The way we logically think they would be related, because it's her mother's twin brother. Her mother's in a coma, but technically they're like bonded angels, like fallen. I don't know, it's weird. They're not technically related, but logically they are. I think this one has like a family tree in the beginning of it, and like I said, it's weird because they're related, but then like they're technically dating, but it's not like incest because they're vampires and they're just reincarnated into different like people. Their blood is just, I don't know, like I said, it's weird. But yeah, she ends up having to go live with him and his twins, and the first twins, which are a big prominent part of the first 2 books. I know it sounds kind of crazy. If you like haven't read it, they kind of explain it better than I'm doing it now, so it makes more sense. But when you think about it, it's kind of incesty in a way, but we're not going to get into that. Anyway, she ends up having to live with them, and it's weird. There's a lot of other shenanigans going on. In this book, we find out that there is like some evil possibly getting out. There's a lot more silver bloods in this, and learning more about some maneuverings by the silver bloods and all of that. But like I said, I can't really get into this one because this is starting to like, really each of these books builds on to each other and expands the world and expands the story. So if I talk a little bit more about anything, I really would just like be giving previous books as well as possibly this book away. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's weird rereading this because I am definitely seeing flaws in it that obviously I didn't see when I was younger. I think this will always hold a nostalgia factor for me, but it was just something about reading this where I was just like, I see the problems with this, and I see why people probably reading this for the first time now would most likely not like it at all. But yeah, I will probably always love this because this is one of the series that I started off reading. Each of the books in the series gets better and better, so hopefully by the end of this, I know I didn't read the last couple books, so hopefully by those I just like really end up loving it, because it seems like I said, each book gets better and better. The next book that I have, which is also a 3.5 out of 5 stars, is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I finally picked this one up. I think this is actually the Outcrate book for February of 2017. I don't know. This was like one of the earlier books that I hadn't picked up. This was one of those books that had a bunch of mixed opinions on, so I just wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. But I ended up doing a buddy read of this one in March, so I finally picked it up. And I thought this one was okay. Like, I enjoyed it, but I also had some reservations about this one. So just in case you haven't heard, which I would be really surprised because I feel like there's a lot of hype surrounding this book at the moment, especially considering the final book in the trilogy is about to come out. But this one is following Scarlett and her younger sister named Donatella. Mainly is like following Scarlett's perspective. She has always been obsessed with Caraval, which is this circusy game type of show thing. I don't know how best to explain it. It's like an interactive game, and she has always wanted to go since she's heard stories from her grandmother about it, but she's never been able to go to it. She lives, like I said, with her sister on one of, I think it's called the Conquered Isles of this land, and their father is really abusive. We're following Scarlett as over like 7 years she writes letters to the caravan master asking him to like come visit their island, so she is able to go to this show with her sister, and she never gets a response. And then on this final year, she's just like, you know what, I'm done. She sends this letter saying, you know, I'm about to get married, so it's best that you don't come. And then she gets a response from him, from Legend, saying that, hey, here's some tickets, we're gonna be here, you can come to the show. And she's like, you know what, I'm not gonna go because I have all of these things planned and I don't want to get my father angry, because she's about to get married and she sees this as her escape from her father. Her and her sister could go live with this guy who she's supposed to be marrying, and she's like, at least they'll be away from their father. So she decides that she's not gonna go, but her sister ends up making arrangements for them to go anyway, and she ends up on this island to go participate in this year's Caraval. So once they get to this island, she finds out that her sister has actually been taken, and one of the things that they talk about as she's like going into the game to try to go find her sister to take her back so they can go home is that it's all an elaborate performance. It's a game, and don't get too swept up in it or you might go crazy. As she's going through the process, she realized that things are too real, or they seem too real to be a game, and she doesn't really know what to believe. Basically, she is kind of forced to go on a scavenger hunt along with the other players of Caraval to find her sister, or she will be lost to her forever. That is like the general plot of the story, so I'm sure you've heard people talking about that. This one was weird because going into it, like at first I thought it was going to be magical, but as the story was going along, I was just like, you know, this doesn't sound like it's supposed to have like magic in it. But then you get to Caraval and it's a mix of, like, I was confused because I didn't know if it was supposed to be magic or if it was like if everything that they put on was part of the game. But it was like certain things I'm like, that has to be magic because of, you know, she had this dress that changed all the time, like based off of I think the mood of the dress or maybe her mood, it changed. And I don't know, it was like little things like that. I was just like, okay, that's a little weird. There were some things that were going on that made me question. One of the things that I enjoyed about this was the fact that I didn't know who to trust, and even that I was still kind of on the fence about it because I was just like really confused about what was real and what was not, which I think was the whole purpose of this. So I think on that front it did a good job. However, I felt like there were some things, I don't know what it was exactly, but there was something that was keeping me from becoming completely immersed in this. I will say that this was one of those books where I felt like I was sucked in and I always wanted to know what was going on. I was like, what's going to happen next? Because like some of the things I was just really surprised by, so I couldn't imagine what might happen next. But like I said, at the same time, there was just something keeping me from being completely immersed. I think also, like, I think that double-edged sword of not knowing who to trust and not really knowing what's real and what's not is what that problem was for me. So I enjoyed it, and I most likely will continue on with the series because I'm curious as to what happens next. Because of the way it ended, I was just like, okay, well, there has to be more to that, and I'm wondering what those specific answers are. So I'll probably continue. I need to like get Legendary because I didn't buy it because I was like, I want to see if I enjoy this before I go and purchase the sequel. The next set of books I'm going to talk about are all part of the same series, which is why I'm talking about them all together, and that is the Sugar Baby series by Rebecca Witherspoon. I decided to put this here because averaging out all my ratings for all of them, it averaged to 3.5 stars. So the first book was So Sweet, and I gave this one 4 stars. The second book was So Right, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. And the final book in the series was So For Real, and I gave this one 3 stars. So each book I took down half a star. This is a romance series, and it is also a novella series. So I think the first book was like only 100 pages, and then the second and third were about 150 or so. This series starts off following this girl named Kayla. She has a roommate, and they're both kind of struggling at the moment. But there were some things about her roommate that I was kind of a little iffy about from the beginning. So she had recently got fired from her job. She had just bought a new car. So she's pretty much struggling, but luckily she has some savings. So her and her roommate are pretty much living off savings. My problem with that was that her roommate wasn't really doing anything, and her roommate kept like going out. Like she would be out all day. She wasn't talking about going to get a job or anything like that. And then I think she mentioned once that she went out to eat with friends, but then she was like, well, the main character Caleb was like, well, she swore that so and so paid for her, but I was just like, but she know y'all don't have no money though, so how's she going out? Like, it was little things where I was just like, certain things just didn't make sense. And she was like driving her around, I don't know, she was buying them food with her savings, and it was like this friend wasn't doing anything. So I already didn't really like her friend because with that, and then like some of the comments that she was making throughout it, I was just like, questionable. Anyway, getting back into this. So like I said, they her and her roommate were kind of like really struggling, mainly her, because like we see what she's doing and how she's providing money to make sure they have rent paid. So she is really not wanting to go home. She's feeling like a failure because she's put out all these job applications, but she hasn't heard back from anyone yet. So this roommate suggests that she sign up for the Sugar Baby website with her. The roommate has done it. I don't remember her name, but the roommate has done it before. I think she said she did it while she was in college to help pay her way through college. And she was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do it again. Best solution. And she was like, you know, you should do it too. You can probably find somebody too. Girl was like, I don't think so. She's a plus size black girl. She's just like, I don't think I can. She's like, I don't think anybody's gonna want all this. And the roommate was like, no, don't say that. You know, that was one thing I was like, okay, she's okay for that. But she was just like, no, I'm sure somebody will want you just as much as anybody else. So she ends up getting her to agree to sign up for this website, and they like sign up to go to this mixer where, you know, it's just a bunch of older guys and the younger girls going to meet up to see if there are any connections. They go. She's not really expecting much because she's not comfortable with the whole situation. She just can't really get it out of her head how, first of all, she's gonna be like with an old dude and they like want sex and they're gonna give you money for it basically, or give you something for it. So she's just not really all that up for it, but she goes anyway because she's like really desperate. She's just like, I need this money, or we need this money, and I don't know what else to do at this point besides going home. So she goes to this mixer, and when I get there, her roommate is just like really social, and she like gets sucked into the crowd, and for a while she's trying to do it, but she's, like I said, she's really uncomfortable. So she like goes off to the bathroom, and then she decides to just go sit and wait until her friend's ready, since they drove there together. Turns out there's a guy sitting at this table, and they end up talking a little bit, and he's just like, hey, I'm interested in you. So he gives her his card, and he basically tells her, he's like, you know, figure out what you want to do. If you're up for it, give me a text and we can work something out. She is immediately attracted to him, but she's still kind of skeptical about the situation. She's just like, this whole situation just seems a little shady, and I'm not really down for that. But she's curious, and she's like really into him. So she texts him, and they talk about it a little bit, and he was just like, hey, you know, why don't you come talk to me while I'm on my way to New York, or on the airport to go to New York, and we can see if it's something you want to do. And then while she's there, he's like, hey, why don't you just come to New York with me, and you can get a feel of what it's going to be like. And she's just like, well, I don't have any plans, let's go. So he takes her off to New York, and they kind of get a feel about what the situation will be. And I will tell you guys, I never, and I repeat, this is the second time that I have done this, but the first time I felt like it was a slightly different situation. Characters were around the same age, but I think the guy in I'm talking about A Duke by Default, sorry, the guy I believe in A Duke by Default was actually younger than the guy in this series. I think this guy in the Sugar Baby series he was just about to turn 50, I believe, and I think at some point throughout this series he did end up turning 50, and I think that guy was like late 30s, maybe 40s or so. So not too far off, but I think he was still a good amount younger than the guy in the series. So, you know, going into this, I was just like, you know what, I don't know if I'm gonna be into this. I just like, this first time I've ever read about a sugar baby sugar daddy situation, and the only reason I picked it up for 2 reasons. One, because it was 100 pages, I was really into a quick romance, and 2, because I looked up reviews and I think I saw 1 or 2 people that I really trust their reviews on romances on Goodreads, and they also said they weren't really expecting much from it, but they were just like, it was really good. So it's just like, you know what, I will pick it up. I think they were on Scribd, which is why I picked them up, because I had access to them from something I was already paying for. So I was just like, okay, let's try it out. And I will tell you guys, I was just like, this first novella, it was only 100 pages, and I was just like, what is this whole storyline? Yes, it was good. And pretty much the rest of the series kind of just follows the progression of the start of their initial arrangement into them thinking about, will it possibly become something long term, and going through all the difficulties of what comes along with that. At first, like I said, that first one was really good. I wasn't expecting to love that near as much. It had all of the tension and like the sexy parts of it, and like everything that I love in my romances, it had that, which, yes. So if you're looking for anything of that nature, or something really taboo that you never expected to like, I would suggest checking out that first one. The other 2 were kind of like iffy, I think mainly because they had decided on what they wanted to do, and those second 2 books were kind of just following them as things became more permanent and dealing with friend situations and not so much friends anymore situations, and learning how to work together, like learning the dynamic of being together when they hadn't really been with anybody like that for so long for each of them. Really, that tension that was in that first novella wasn't really in the other 2, so that might have been a big part of why it wasn't like as much excitement for the first one for me. But I think overall it was really good. The next 2 books I'm going to talk about are volumes 1 and 2. These are comics of a series, and this is Motor Crush, like I said, volumes 1 and 2 by Brendan Fletcher, and I gave volume 1 3.5 stars and volume 2 4 stars. In volume 1, we're following this character named Domino Swift. She is up and coming in motorcycle racing. She is kind of a newbie on the scene, but she is gaining popularity, and she is one of the people that a lot of people are betting on to win, or like being close to winning. But on the side, she also participates in illegal races to win this it's not a drug per se, but it's this substance called Crush, and it's known as a machine narcotic. So people like take this stuff and they put it into their motorcycles, and it like superpowers their motorcycles, but it's like basically like their bikes or whatever, you know, this stuff is used on becomes like a junkie for this stuff. So if you're not constantly using it, then your bike basically, or whatever you're using, which pretty much everyone in this series that they're showing are on motorcycles that are using this. But if you aren't constantly using this stuff, then your motorcycle starts like breaking down, and basically what would happen if someone was taking drugs and, you know, starts wreaking havoc on the body. This stuff does that to machines. But our main character Domino, we find out that she's actually using this stuff, like she's like inhaling this stuff, and she needs it to survive. So if she doesn't take it, then her body starts breaking down. So she finds out that she's not normal, because that should not be right, because it's doing all this crazy stuff to machines, but you know, her body needs it. So we don't really get any information, or at least in these first 2 volumes, we don't really get too much information on who she is. Or okay, at the end of the second volume we get a little bit, but it's still not really explained why she needs this stuff. The first volume, the plot was a bit all over the place. I felt like it was trying to put so much in a little amount of pages, and it was kind of just jumping all around, and it would have been better if it was a little bit more focused. But I got the basics of the story and I did enjoy it, so I really enjoyed it for that fact. And then for volume 2, this one was also a little strange because volume 2 takes place after a 2-year time jump. So at the end of the first volume, Domino like goes missing in a way from the people who are with her at the end of the book, and then 2 years later she pops up. She doesn't think any time has passed, but everyone else just like, they have moved on with their lives and face the consequences that her leaving has left them with. So she comes back kind of expecting things to just pick up because she thinks she's been gone for like a night. Like I said, we get a little bit of information, but we don't really understand what's going on. I felt like this one was better woven together. Now we're getting into my 4-star section, and we're going to be talking about some romance novels now. The next 2 books that I'm going to be talking about are the first 2 books in the Royally series by Emma Chase. So first I have Royally Screwed, and I gave this one 4 stars. So this one starts off following Nicholas Pembroke. He is currently the Crown Prince of Westco. He actually has a lot more parts to his name than that, but I just took his first and his last because I was like, I'm not saying all of that on camera. He is actually sent to New York to go retrieve his brother because his brother is off like partying, and his grandmother, the queen, is just like not having it. So she has kind of at the very beginning she gives him like these demands, like, okay, it's time for you to get married, you know, we need to set these things up, but I also need you to go get your brother and bring him back so we can do some damage control where he's concerned. And Nick isn't really looking forward to going to New York because his parents had actually died on a plane on their way back from New York. I don't think they really explain what happened in between him like getting to New York and him getting to where we meet where he meets the female main character, Olivia Hammond. But he ends up going into her cafe really late at night, and he's drunk, and he ends up offering her money to like sleep with him, and she turns him down. He's just like, well, everyone could be bought for a price, and she's just like, yeah, not me, I'm not down for that. He comes back the next day and apologizes. He ends up getting her to agree to go out with him, so they end up starting to spend time together. They realize they like each other, and he tells her pretty much up front, this can only be for the summer, we only have a few months, so we just need to enjoy it while we can. And she's just like, you know what, that's okay, I get you have things going on, I have things that I need to take care of, so we're gonna do what we can with the time that we have. So they're like dating during this time. They aren't just sleeping together. I don't even think they like get together right away, I don't remember. Anyway, they basically start dating over the few months that he has, and he's really conflicted because he knows that he has this commitment that he needs to get married by this certain time, but he is finally interested in someone, and he realizes that he's not happy about having to get married, and like the requirements for the future queen of Westco, obviously Olivia does not fit into those standards, and he's just like, he doesn't really know what to do. He doesn't want to get married, but he feels like it's his duty. I was really happy to say that, like I said, it was a good story. Their romance was pretty sweet, and how it all ended I was actually pretty happy with. Next, like I said, I'm gonna move to Royally Matched, and there will be a slight spoiler for Royally Screwed, so if you don't want to hear any spoilers for that, like the quick spoiler that I have, I will just give you kind of a timestamp to where I stopped talking about the spoiler part for it. So, or you might just have to skip honestly my whole little talking about this book if you don't want to be spoiled. After his older brother abdicates the throne, Henry is now next in line for the crown, or for the throne, or whatever, to become king. Basically is what I'm saying. He's not really too happy with that, but he knows that he really doesn't have a choice because he actually really likes Olivia, and he was happy that his brother decided to be with her over, you know, all his responsibilities, but like I said, he's not really too happy with the situation that he's now in, because he doesn't get to just go party and play around like he was doing before. So on his first few encounters, like officially as the crown prince, he isn't really doing too well, and he really doesn't know how to navigate the world and how to play the game that all of these people around him are trying to play. So his grandmother is like going off, and she's just like, what are you doing? You kind of like just set back everything that me and your brother have been trying to do for all this time. And he's just like, well, I didn't know because I wasn't part of this, you know. And his brother goes and sticks up for him, and he's just like, I know that he can be king, but you need to give him space to figure it out. So his grandmother decides to send him off to somewhere else, another one of their properties, to, for a lack of a better term, get his shit together and get it all figured out. And she's just like, you know, go take the time that you need, go study, go learn, go figure it out. And he goes, and I think after like a day or two, he's just like, okay, look, this is way too boring for me. I don't have time for this. And he had previously got an offer to film a dating reality show called Matched Royal Edition. He ends up calling the producer who gives him the offer about doing this show that will be featuring him, and he ends up having all these people come to this location. He's supposed to be there alone. Our main female character of the story, she is offered the chance to participate in the show, but she's just like, I'm not really down for that. But she's trying to get out of this work commitment where she has to speak in front of this like crowd of people, and she agrees to go because she like says, she's like, well, I can be my sister's assistant. And as you can expect, a lot of things go wrong because he has these feelings for her on the side, but he's also trying to fulfill this contract that he's not really happy with after too long, and a lot of things happen from there. Another one I wasn't really expecting too much from. Henry wasn't like my favorite character when he showed up in Royally Screwed. Like, he wasn't the worst person ever, but I felt like he didn't take certain things seriously. But I feel like in this one we got to see a whole new side of him, and I think him and Sarah together, which was the main female character, them together was just really good, and I wasn't expecting that, so I really enjoyed seeing, like I said, them two together. Next, I'm going to talk about The Studying Hours by Sarah Nye. This is the first book in the How to Date a Douchebag series. This one is following Sebastian, but he goes by Oz, and Jameson. So the two end up meeting because she's pretty much always in the library studying, and him and his friends are in the library, and they see her, and I think they mention her, and they go back and she's there again, and his friends, like, they're talking about something, and his friends end up daring him to go get her to kiss him for some money. At first she doesn't agree to it, but then he's talking to her, so she's like, you know what, I'm curious, let's do it. And they kiss, and ever since they kiss, he's kind of been obsessed with getting to know her more. Like, he couldn't stop thinking about her, and he keeps like going and reaching out and trying to talk to her and seeing what she's about. But he's also not offering a relationship. He was just like, I think he told her they can do like a physical thing or something, and she was just like, yeah, I'm not really for that. So he like is continuing to pursue her, and it was another one I wasn't really expecting too much from this. I think because when I started this one, this was the only book in the series. Like I said, I had read the fourth book, but in that fourth book, the guy was actually really sweet, and it was a girl character I think was kind of a douchebag or whatever. I don't know if that was still the right term, but the guy, I was just like, his personality at the beginning, I was just like, he's a pig, and I don't like him. I was just like, I don't think I would be up for that. But as the story progressed, he got a little better. He was still kind of a jerk at times, but he became really sweet towards Jameson, which was the whole point of the story. So I think they worked really well together, and I will most likely eventually continue on with the series. The next one that I have is Untouchable by Thalia Hibbert, and I don't know which cover I have up because the covers were just recently re-released, like they were redone for this entire series. But this is the second book in the Ravenswood series, and this one is following Hannah Kaba, who is Ruth, which was the main character in the first book, her sister. Her and her sister just didn't have the best reputation after some things happened. When Hannah actually ended up messing up, I can't even remember his name, but Ruth's ex, his car, when she found out what he did to Ruth. And because of that, he pressed charges, and because of that, she hasn't been able to work in childcare, which is like her dream. She went to school for it and everything, and like that was like her joy, and now she's not even able to do that. So she has all of these jobs, and or she's had all of these like customer service jobs, and you know, being in this town, these people don't like you, there's always issues. So we start off the story with her working, I believe she's working in like a coffee shop or something like that, and somebody's bringing an order back because they're saying she messed up the order. You know, she's like, I have a photographic memory, I don't forget things, and I know what you ordered, and I gave you what you wanted, or I gave you what you ordered. And the lady's trying to argue with her. It's like, no, you didn't, you messed up, I ordered this and this is what you gave me. So it's a whole big thing, and she ends up like quitting her job because she's just like, I had enough. I don't think at that point specifically, but it's clearly stated that she has depression, and she goes through like stuff builds up in her because she doesn't like to let anything out, and then she just like blows up, and then it's like all done, and she's like, she feels better before it goes into a cycle again. But this guy Nathan Davis ends up coming back into town. In the first book, we don't follow, but we see Zachary Davis, who is the younger brother of Nathan. He finds out that his mother has cancer, or he knew, and he tells his brother. So his brother ends up moving back to town with his 2 kids, and he hasn't been back since he left after high school. She ends up running into him and his kids after she quits her job. And like one thing leads to another. They're talking, and he I think he might have mentioned her to his brother, and his brother's like, hey, you should hire her. She ends up working for him, like being a live-in nanny, kind of helping with the kids and helping out with the house. And she's trying to keep her feelings at bay because she's always had a crush on him ever since something that he did for her when he was younger, and he never knew, and you know, she never told him, and all of these things, but he's noticed her. I think he also had like a crush on her when he was younger, but nothing ever came from it because they didn't really talk to each other. I'm not going to get into too many details because I feel like this video is already going to be super long. Just know that this is another good one. I did not enjoy this one as much as A Girl Like Her. I don't know, it was something about that one that really stuck out for me that wasn't in this book. I could appreciate the story, but I think the characters from the first book really have a special place in my heart. So the next one that I have for 4 stars, which is also considered a romance, is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. Both of these next 2 books I'm going to talk about are YA, by the way. The previous books were all adult romances. This one is following Natasha and Daniel. I'm sure you guys have heard about this book. It has been floating around a lot, especially considering that the movie is coming out next month. Natasha is actually about to be deported from the United States. Her and her family are in the US illegally. Daniel is actually on his way to an interview for college. I don't know if it's like an admissions interview or something along those lines, but he is on his way, and he ends up bumping into Natasha, and they end up spending the day together. I don't know what I was expecting from this book. Going into it, I had heard people say good things about it, but it was one of those things where I was skeptical about it. Basically, a lot of people was just like, it has insta love, which I don't have a problem with, but it was insta love done right, and I can totally agree with that. However, I feel like this book tackled so much more than the 2 main characters falling in love. We get to see a bunch of different characters, their perspective on different parts of the book. So Natasha and Daniel are the main focus, but we also get to see other people as they viewed them, and some of the reasons why, you know, some of the reasons behind why certain things were said to them, and or how certain things that each of the characters said affected someone else's life. And it was just like so well put together, and I love how everything connected. Even the epilogue was just absolutely amazing. I love this one, and it's definitely going to be one of my favorites by the end of the year. Right, and the final 4-star book that I have to talk about that is not a manga is The Bells by Danielle Clayton. This book is following Camellia Beauregard, I think it's her name. She is living in the world of Orleans, and she is actually about to make her debut in the next generation of Bells alongside her sisters. And of course, as well as the rest of her sisters, she wants to be named the favorite Belle. So she's willing to do whatever it takes to gain the queen's favor. However, being the favorite is not everything that it seems, and the queen ends up asking Camellia to do things that she didn't even know were possible, and she has to decide whether she's going to help the queen or if she's actually going to do what she can to save her sisters and all of the other Bells from the things that have been going on in this kind of corrupt society. This one tackles a lot of difficult topics that you wouldn't expect, and it takes such a different take on it that I really enjoyed it. I don't even know how to express all of the feelings that I had with this, and I feel like I, once again, like I just said with The Sun Is Also a Star, I probably didn't get everything out of it I could because I was listening to the audiobook, and there were times where I had to rewind stuff because I kind of like spaced out. I wasn't really paying attention to everything. So this is another one that I'm gonna have to reread at some point, but as far as this read, I enjoyed it. I gave this 4 stars. I think this was really well done, and I do have the sequel, and I can't wait to see how this series wraps up. Alright, so moving on to my manga that were 4 stars. The first one that I have to talk about is Full Metal Alchemist, the 3-in-1 edition, volume 1 by Hiromu Arakawa. This is following these two brothers, Edward and Alphonse Elric. They're both alchemists, and Edward is actually known as a Full Metal Alchemist. I think he is the youngest and one of the most powerful alchemists, even though people always think that it's his brother because he's like full metal. Anyway, the two are in this weird situation. Their mother passed away, and they ended up trying to bring her back to life. And because of this, they ended up losing limbs, and I think his brother like lost his physical body because of it. And in order to bring his brother back, he like binds him to this metal statue armor thing, and now they're on the search to find something to help them get Edward's brother's human body back. And they're just kind of traveling around different places. They work for the government, I believe, which is really looked down upon. From what I've seen, they don't really follow any specific orders. I think they check in and do whatever they need to do in order to be funded by the government, but as far as like following orders, they don't really seem to do that. And they have quite a few people after them, or they run into situations where they start to cause trouble and then people are after them, and it causes some issues. I have heard a lot about the series, and I know a lot of people watch this anime. This is one of the ones I had heard about but did not watch growing up, so I was interested in reading it, and this was one of the picks for the Attack on Manga book club. It was just volume 1, but it was cheaper to get this one, you know, for the 3 volumes than to just buy single volume editions. So I picked this one up, and I really enjoyed it. It was interesting, and it was funny seeing all the situations that they got into. However, this was unexpectedly dark at times. Definitely wasn't expecting it to be as dark as it was sometimes, but because of that, I really enjoyed it because it was a good mix of the dark and the humor sides of the story. So looking forward to continuing on with this. I don't know when I'll do that because these volumes are kind of expensive, and I'm trying to be a little bit more conservative. Next, I have Fruits Basket, the collector's edition, volume 1, and this volume contains volume 1 and 2 of the original series. This one follows this character named Toru. She is in high school, and at the beginning of the story, she's actually living out of a tent on this random property. Her mother recently passed away, and she was living with her grandfather, but her grandfather was just like, hey, I'm having renovations on the house done. I'm going to stay with family. Can you find friends to stay with? And she doesn't really want to burden her friends, because I think one of her friends like lives in like a really small apartment, and then another one of her friends has like a bunch of siblings or something. So she's just like, I don't want to be a burden to them, so I'm just gonna go live out of this tent. And she's walking around near the property where she set up her tent one day, and she finds this house, and she realizes that a classmate of hers actually lives there with family, and they realize that she's staying on their property out of this tent, so they offer to let her stay in an open room that they have until her grandfather finishes up the renovations. Not long after she ends up staying with them, she finds out that the boys in this family, because she really has, like, she met one adult and then her classmate and then another guy, she finds out that they're related to the Chinese zodiac, and whenever they're embraced by the opposite sex, they turn into their respective animal. So as you can expect, some shenanigans happen from there. This is a story, it was really cute and it was funny as well, but this is another one that also had some unexpected dark moments. I can see that there is something going on in the background that I'm sure will be elaborated on as I continue on with the series. I believe there is some curse going on that they're trying to break, and it seems like they're gonna use our main character Toru to possibly help break that curse. So we'll see what happens from there. But I have only read this one. This is another one that I really want to continue on with the series. I do have volume 2, but I don't know when I'll be able to continue on with this, because these volumes are also super expensive. The last manga that I have to talk about that I gave 4 stars to was Skip Beat Volume 42 by Yoshiki Nakamura. As I usually say, as I get a little further into these big series, I'm not going to talk too much about what's going on specifically, because I don't really want to give anything away. But in this one, Kyoko, our main character, is actually in the middle of an audition for her next big possible feature film. This one wasn't my favorite volume compared to the last few before this one. I feel like this one is a little bit slower. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it. I love the series, and I can't wait for the next volume, which will be almost at the end of the year. And the final book that I have to talk about in this wrap up is The Tea Dragon Society by Katy O'Neill. And I actually gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. It's a pretty short comic. It's only like 60 pages, I believe, not including like the end pages where it's like information on the different dragons and stuff like that, even though I did read those pages as well. This is following this character named Greta. We start off and she is like learning to weld, or working on her welding skills with her mother, I believe. Her mother ends up sending her into town to go buy some food, and when she's in town she actually ends up finding this lost tea dragon, and her mother is just like, hey, I know who that belongs to, so she goes to return it. The person, I'm not sure if that's the correct term, because it's like some type of magical creature. I'm pretty sure this thing here is the one that owned the tea dragon. When Greta returns the tea dragon, he offers to teach her how to care for tea dragons. And at first she's not sure and she doesn't go back, but then she eventually, like after talking to her mom a little bit, her mom's just like, if you're interested, you know, you should go do it. And she goes back and she learns about caring for the tea dragons. However, while that is like the main focus of the story, it does touch on different topics, and I think this was like so cute and adorable, and the artwork is just beautiful. And my only complaint about this is that honestly I wish that it was longer. I wish we got a little bit more backstory about different characters and we just got to spend more time with them, because I just wanted more. It's pretty much all there is to it. This was adorable. Like I said, I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely my favorite book of the month. Alright, so this video is going to be extremely long. Once again, me trying to talk about all of the books leads to me sitting here talking way longer than I normally would. So hopefully you guys don't mind me having longer videos, because I'm actually talking about what the books are for the most part. But that's all of the 21 books that I read in March. That's all I have for you guys today in this video. If you have read any of these books, let me know what you thought about them. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again in the next one. Bye.